Hi! Today I'm sharing the story of Ruth with you, and this will come after a lot of other stories throughout the end of the summer leading into fall about Old Testament characters, starting all the way back from, all the way back from creation, all the way through Noah, and of course Moses, and before that Abraham and Sarah, and Jacob, Esau, Joseph, so many different characters who we have gone over the lives of and made connections to. We've been trying to draw a really direct line between these early stories of the people of God all the way through to the salvation plan, because that's really what we're building up to. We're building closer and closer to Advent. This great green growing season has a lot to do with setting the stage for Advent and kind of demonstrating what the world was like, what the lives of the people of God looked like before those prophecies came true and that Advent story begins. So we will be kind of building toward that with other character studies, so you might draw connections back and forward. Today, when we talk about Ruth, you're talking about those family members that were direct descendants of David. And of course, David was, as we say, the great-great-great-great-great-grandfather of Jesus through Joseph's family. So it's a wonderful thing to be able to make these connections with the kids. As you're teaching the story of Ruth, it's the regular session schedule. So the children will be dropped off, come in right away, and they'll be with you the entire service. That being said, you have plenty of time. This is a long story, but do take your time getting to know the kids, make sure that everyone has arrived so they don't miss any of the story. Ask some questions about their school year so far, maybe their favorite thing to do at school, or any field trips that they may have had. This is a great chance to begin kind of talking about the seasonality of the year and the coming fall, autumn, and what they're looking forward to in that sense. You'll change the circle of the church year to the next Green Sunday. And so just warm up with the kids. The more you know them and the better you know their names and kind of the dynamic of the classroom, the more smoothly the lesson will go. With that in mind, I would definitely recommend that as you're kind of getting to know the kids and you're noticing what sort of behavior management issues might already be at play, feel absolutely free to move the different students around. Just ask one to sit next to you if you've noticed that they are talking a lot while other people are sharing during that kind of warm-up time. Feel free to seat them boy, girl. That usually goes a long way, but absolutely feel at freedom to move them around as is best for you, because while you're teaching the lesson, you don't want to have to keep stopping to remind them to be attentive. So as we begin the lesson, do just keep in mind that it's your prerogative, your authority to manage in a way that allows the lesson to be told. So if you need to move a student early on to the doorkeeper or kind of situate them as you see fit, then feel that you are allowed to do that. All right, we'll begin, and I'm going to move the camera down so you can see the story pieces. All right, friends, well, today we are learning about Ruth. You might not know this, but Ruth was part of the family of God, part of that long family tree that led the way toward Jesus. People were already talking about Jesus. They were already getting ready for Jesus, but the world was a very different place. The world wasn't quite ready for Jesus. We've talked a lot about some of these amazing characters, these family members of God, great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents of Jesus, Mary and Joseph, of Elizabeth and John. And as we think about these people, we remember that they struggled and they fought and they loved and they learned the best ways to love God and to love each other. And one of the people that we're going to learn about is Ruth. Now, the people of God had been traveling for a long time. Remember, they were slaves in Egypt. The Pharaoh had forgotten about Joseph, had forgotten about the good work that Joseph had done, and so put the family members of Joseph, put the people of God in slavery. And as he put the people in slavery, God noticed, God heard, God was aware, and through Moses, God brought the people out of slavery into freedom. After they had been in the desert for many, many years, Moses brought down the truth from Mount Sinai, the 10 Commandments, the 10 best ways to live, had shared those with the people. They had traveled on, the Ark of the Covenant, all of the things that we've learned about were there. They had traveled into the Promised Land. Moses had not traveled with them. He had died before they went into the Promised Land. And after they were in the Promised Land, they continued to travel. They had crossed into the Promised Land over the Jordan River. And they began to fill the Promised Land, travel to all the corners of the land that was given to them by God, promised to them by God through Abraham. And as they filled the land with people, mothers and fathers and children, all throughout the land. Imagine a crowded place, but a beautiful place. A place where people work together, a place where people have to learn to share. They filled the Promised Land. And all along, the Jordan River was there. All along, they lived in the Promised Land. They filled the land. Some of them began to live in a place called Bethlehem. You've heard of that place before. Bethlehem, if you'll remember all the way back to Jacob, was a place where God was, house of God, Bethlehem. It was a big city, not as big as Atlanta, but big for that time. Bethlehem was a big place with many, 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 many different people from all different personalities, all different ways of talking to each other, of playing, interests, and favorite foods, people from all over. There was also a place that was much smaller called Moab. Moab was a smaller town near Bethlehem. Many, many years went by, and then the time came when there was no rain, so the wheat couldn't grow. There wasn't enough water coming down from the sky, and so the earth got dry and the plants dried up. I don't know if you've ever tried to grow a plant without water, but it doesn't do very well. It doesn't last for very long. The water was just, there wasn't enough of it. Even if it rained a little, it didn't rain enough. And so some of the people that were living in Moab decided that maybe they would cross the Jordan River. Oops. Sorry, I got mixed up. I'm going to backtrack a little bit. So the people decided to travel from Bethlehem to Moab. Sorry for the confusion. I got mixed up myself. And feel free to correct yourself if you get mixed up with the students too. Happens all the time. Anyways, backtracking a little bit. So some of the people that were living in Bethlehem, where they didn't have enough water to grow the wheat, decided to travel over to Moab, where maybe there would be some more food. There was a woman there named Naomi, and she had 2 sons. Naomi was the mother, and she had 2 sons. And they were among those people who had crossed over to Moab to find more food. So they had been living in Bethlehem, and they traveled over the Jordan River in search of food. And in this new land, they were very happy. But then something happened. Naomi and her husband and her 2 sons were living over there on the other side of the Jordan. But then her husband died. He wasn't alive anymore. So now it was just Naomi and her 2 sons. It was very sad for Naomi and for the boys. It was especially hard for Naomi because a long time ago, a woman didn't really have enough if she didn't have a husband to take care of her. Now, women can work and have jobs, but a long time ago it wasn't quite the same. So without the husband, without the father, the family really was quite unfortunate. So Naomi and her sons wondered what they would do without their husband and without their father. Well, later, the sons got married. And then they had wives. And so there were 5 people in the family. These women came from the city of Moab, from this town where they had traveled to, and their names were Orpah and Ruth. Remember, this is a story about Ruth. Well, time went on, and one day, the 2 sons died as well. And then it was just Orpah, Ruth, and Naomi, and no one else to take care of them. No father, no sons, no husbands. It's hard to be a widow, to be a wife whose husband has died. Back then, it could be very dangerous because they may not have enough food to eat. They may not have a house to live in because they didn't have anyone to provide for them. So they were all widows together. A widow is someone who used to have a husband whose husband died. Naomi didn't really know what to do, so she decided to go back across the desert to her family in Bethlehem. Naomi said,